Thank you, Paul, and thank you to the REIT corporate team for putting on another cracking event and also providing me with the great opportunity for warming up the crowd for Koshi. So I know that you're all chomping at the bit to see Koshi, so I'll get into it. Battery Age Minerals, we are a battery metal focused exploration company dedicated to unlocking the full potential of our lithium asset in Ontario and our zinc lead germanium asset in Austria. Corporate profile, look, not too dissimilar to many of our other peers. The larger market sentiment has been challenging over the past 12 to 18 months. However, the team remains steadfast in our approach on unlocking the full potential to make sure we are well placed to capitalise when the market does turn. Roughly $13 million market cap, but I'd like to point your attention to the $1.8 million we've got in the bank and also the $9.5 million that we hold as an asset in a company called Equinox Resources. If you combine these two together, that results in a fairly negligible enterprise value, and we believe this provides a unique opportunity for investors, especially when considering the quality of our portfolio. Some company highlights, as mentioned, we are a battery metals focused management team, and we are dedicated to unlocking that full potential of the lithium asset we've got in Ontario and the zinc lead germanium project in Austria. We've got demonstrated exploration success. We're at Falcon Lake, where we've proved up over 5 kilometres of mineralised spodumene-bearing pegmatites, and we have demonstrated drilling success with wide, high-grade intercepts from surface. Falcon Lake project is proximal to supporting infrastructure, all-weather roads. It's roughly 10 kilometres off the Trans-Canadian Railway line, which runs straight down to Toronto and ultimately over to Detroit, Windsor. And we have access to a deep water port at the town of Thunder Bay. Last but not least, we believe we have the best exposure to the strategic minerals, gallium and germanium on the ASX. Our board of directors bring with them a diverse range of experience and background. Robert Martin, our non-executive chairman, has over 25 years in the mining and mine services areas. He's the current chairman of Critical Resources, an ASX-listed Ontario-based explorer with a JORC-compliant resource. Jerry Fahey, a geologist with over 40 years' experience across the resource sector. He is a former director of CSA Global and a former member of the JORC committee, where he served on the last 2 iterations of the JORC code. And we're rounded out by Dr. David Pevchik, an experienced businessman and corporate professional with a principal focus on the resource and technology sector. The senior management, both myself and Paul Hughes, who've been enjoying the conference here on the Gold Coast, both served in the stable at Pilbara Minerals, combined sort of 11 years there. Myself, a geologist, I was put in as head of geology on site at Pilgangora from early 2017 and had the privilege on leading the team there from exploration through to production. We're ably supported in country by my exploration manager, Nick Mitchell, a Canadian who has multi-minerals and metals experience across multiple jurisdictions, and Harry Spindler, our company secretary, an experienced co-sec in the junior end of the resource sector. So lithium, the topic of much discussion, and there sure is far less lithium explorers here this year than last year. But I think this provides short-term opportunity for what we believe is a long-term trend. So we can talk to a few bits here. So despite the rumours up and down St George's Terrace in Perth, where we're based, what we do know is that EV sales continue to grow. So we're up a further 20% globally upon the first half of last year. The markets within US and Canada continue to experience growth, and as Ken Brinston mentioned yesterday, the price point to purchase an EV in the US has now caught up with China, and it's now cheaper to buy an EV than your standard internal combustion engine. And what does this equate to? So if we think about the supply side, all I believe that the depressed pricing has done over the past 12 to 18 months is ultimately suppress the capital that flows to the next producer, the next developer, and ultimately the next discovery. And as someone who is part of that growth story to go from exploration through to being a producer, I can tell you it is no walk in the park. Ultimately, I believe that this will result in higher prices for longer, and we'll all be surprised, or some of us will be surprised, when that turn happens. As mentioned, we are strategically located in northwest Ontario, 10 kilometres from the Trans-Canadian Railway line, which runs straight past the project down to Toronto and ultimately across to Detroit, Windsor, where there is an absolute glut of OEMs and majors who have made significant investments in the North American supply chain. And we believe that we could not be better positioned geographically to capitalise on the emerging North American lithium supply chain. Some quick highlights to date on Falcon Lake. So we relisted as Battery Age Minerals on the 2nd of February last year, and we quickly got underway with establishing our Canadian operations and executing our early exploration agreements with our First Nation partners. We started drilling in June last year. We concurrently ran summer field exploration campaigns where we identified 5 kilometres of stacked spodumene-bearing pegmatites, all of which are now drill permitted. We acquired additional tenure to join up our Falcon North and Falcon Main claims. We labelled this Falcon Extension, and we found further spodumene on that property in July this year. Drilling success has continued throughout with multiple high-grade intercepts from surface. And on August 24, we recommenced drilling operations where we started testing these new targets. This is a zoomed-in image of the 5-kilometre mineralised corridor which I spoke to. The outlines in green and red represent the permitted drilling locations. Initially, drilling was focused in on the historical known occurrences which were mapped in the 50s by the Ontario Geological Survey. But since then, we've stepped out to the first 2 of the 30 targets that we've generated from our own exploration efforts, and we've been straight into wide zones of mineralised pegmatite. I'd also like to take this opportunity right now to thank our First Nation partners, chiefs, communities and contracting partners for supporting us the whole way through this journey, and we continue to work closely together. Some highlights of our drill results from last year. All of these drill results here are from 2023 drilling. We do have about 2,000 assays in the laboratory right now, and we expect to have those returned in the next week or so. Look forward to updating the market on those. In the interest of time, I will move over to our Bleiburg zinc-lead germanium project in Austria. It's been great to chat to quite a few of you at the booth, people who were interested in what germanium was, the potential market for it, and also the historic site of Bleiburg. So, rich history in Bleiburg. This area was mined for over 700 years, from 1336 up until the early 90s when it shut down due to declining zinc and lead pricing at the time. However, we became interested in it for the strategic minerals germanium and gallium, and from our records, this is the highest grade germanium potential outside of a China-dominated area. So what is germanium and gallium? So germanium is used for high-performance logic chips, anything that requires high processing capabilities, and the stuff that's used in the germanium silicon chips. This is what remains king. So it's a fabulous semiconductor. It's used in the automotive industry and EVs, and also in the Defence Force. We've recently seen the value for germanium absolutely skyrocket. This is based off a couple of main reasons. Firstly, the Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing company has forecasted increasing uses in their germanium 5UM microchips, and also the ever-growing geopolitical rift that continues to grow between China and the US, with the US threatening not to share their new microchip technologies, and the China putting further export restrictions on germanium. At the time of its closure, Bleiburg was the 6th largest producer globally for germanium, and we believe that there is a real need and requirement for these strategic minerals outside of a China-controlled area. Both these minerals are on the critical minerals list in the US, EU, Japan and Australia. And yes, as mentioned before, at grades at over 150 ppm and evidence of up to 1600 ppm for germanium, we believe this is the highest grade germanium potential outside of China. We recently acquired over 100 years of historic mining data from the Bleiburg mine. This is all paper-based, and we've painstakingly put that together, digitised, georeferenced and modelled this area. and the results have been absolutely positive. We acquired further tenure to the west, which we pegged for just pegging price, and in this area in particular, we've identified what we think may hold potential for a complete repeat mineralised system to the west. The orange indicated on the map in the lower right, those are the target horizons that host the mineralisation. They sit between 3 marker horizons, they're shale bands, and I recently went on site where we ground truth a bunch of this data. And from this, we've generated over 6 kilometres of drill targets to go test. Myself and Dr. Simon Dorling conducted many strategic engagement sessions whilst we were in Austria. We had productive meetings with local stakeholders and the mayor's offices of Bad Bleiberg and the neighbouring St Stephan, where we had an extremely positive reception and absolute support for our upcoming exploration activities. So why invest in Battery Age? Firstly, as mentioned, we have a negligible enterprise value. When considering the quality of our assets, we think this provides a real opportunity for investors. Secondly, we've got real projects, including what we believe is the best exposure to germanium and gallium on the ASX, and we've got the team with the know-how and, more importantly, the hunger to get it done. Thank you very much.